Title: The Crazy Life of Somali Pirates. Are they heroes or villains? In the vast, treacherous waters of the Horn of Africa, Somali pirates have long been both feared and revered, caught in a violent storm of desperation, survival, and moral ambiguity. For decades, the once thriving fishing communities along Somalia's coast had watched as foreign trawlers ravaged their seas, scooping up the very fish they depended on, dumping toxic waste, and leaving their waters barren. And while the world turned a blind eye, the Somali coastlines were left to decay, until the pirates emerged, not as villains but as desperate defenders of their lands, taking what they could from the global ships that plundered their resources. At first, it seemed like an act of revenge, a form of justice in a broken world, as pirates hijacked the vessels, demanding ransoms from wealthy shipping companies, while their crews suffered only the smallest fraction of the pain they'd imposed on Somalia's fishermen. But as the years passed, the motives of the pirates grew murkier, and their violence escalated. No longer were they seen just as reactionaries. They had become businessmen of the high seas, controlling a trade worth billions, all while living in lawless, impoverished communities that barely saw a dime of their earnings. The pirates, in their own twisted way, had become symbols of defiance against the global powers that had long ignored Somalia's cries for help. Many of them came from the arid, sun-baked villages of Puntland, raised in a world where family was everything, and survival meant making ruthless choices, often between the bitter reality of poverty and the dangerous allure of piracy. Their leaders, men like Mohammed Abdi, known as the King of the Sea, were seen as heroes by some, a source of pride for those who believed they were taking back what was rightfully theirs, while others, including international forces and local law enforcement, viewed them as lawless criminals who had abandoned any trace of humanity in their insatiable thirst for wealth. The pirates had their own set of codes, often referred to as the pirate's honor, where loyalty to one's crew was sacred, and betrayal was a death sentence. But as the spoils of piracy grew, so did the corruption, with some pirates turning into ruthless warlords, feuding with one another for power, control, and the riches that came with it. They expanded their operations beyond hijacking ships, plunging into the lucrative business of smuggling arms and people across the Red Sea, and even kidnapping tourists for ransom. They were no longer fighting just for survival. They were fighting for dominance over the region, even as the international community dispatched navies and mercenaries to combat their growing influence. Yet, among the chaos, there was a narrative rarely told. The tale of the families who once relied on these pirates for protection, the fishermen whose livelihoods were destroyed by foreign industrial fleets, and the young men, eager to escape poverty, who saw piracy as a way to secure their futures. To them, the pirates were not villains but folk heroes, defenders of their way of life. In the heart of Somalia's coastal towns, there were whispers that, one day, the pirates would be the ones to rise up, not against their people, but against the world that had ignored them for so long. And yet, with the pirates' rise came inevitable destruction. Villages were bombed, lives were lost, and the waters became more perilous, not just for ships but for the very men who once believed they were fighting for justice. And with the end of each successful hijacking came the realization that, in this fight, no one truly won. While the pirates and their families grew richer, the country as a whole sank deeper into chaos, caught in a vicious cycle of violence, revenge, and a never-ending struggle for control. Somali piracy had become a paradox. The pirates were, in a sense, both heroes and villains, depending on who was telling the story. The global powers saw them as criminals, a threat to global trade and security. But to the people who had been silenced for years, they were warriors, fighting to restore balance, to make the world listen to their pain, and to remind the international community that there was still something worth fighting for, even in a place where hope had long since disappeared. In the end, the Somali pirates were both the product of their environment and the architects of their own undoing, trapped in a battle that would likely never end, forever caught between being remembered as heroes who stood against injustice and as villains who lost themselves in their own quest for power, their fate sealed by the very waters they once fought to protect. But now, the pirates face a future in which even they are unsure if they are still fighting for survival, for justice, or simply for the spoils of a war that can never be won.